Teddy Blueger, I think Vancouver may have taken you for granted. Today we're diving into newly acquired Toronto Maple Leafs center Teddy Blueger and what he had to say about being a Vancouver Canuck last year. Because Blueger went out there and revealed some pretty stark and disappointing information about the Canucks. It all comes to us from this video on TSN's website. Again, there's a funny thing going on with the TSN website, and when we try to screen record their page, the video itself, you're just looking at a black screen. It doesn't show up. On my screen, I'm seeing Teddy Blueger's beautiful mug going out there giving some sort of an interview on Zoom. You can see the thumbnail previews as I scroll along the hub of this video profile. But unfortunately, the video itself ain't there. So all we're going to do is read some tweets. We've got Dan Riccio, who went out there and posted this. We also have Mark Masters, who made a tweet. Obviously, Teddy Blueger is a Leaf now, so a lot of attention is going to be placed on him and the things that he says and how he talks about his old teams. Mark Masters' tweet said this: Teddy Blueger speaking out on his last place season with the Canucks last year, my biggest year of learning throughout the course of my career. What did he learn? The importance of team cohesion, culture type stuff. He took some stuff for granted in Pittsburgh with Sidney Crosby setting the tone. And if you read the full quote, there's a lot more context provided, but this is a great way to introduce it. Essentially, Teddy Blueger is going out there and talking about how Sidney Crosby in Pittsburgh helped set the culture straight, and he took that for granted when he was in Vancouver. I wonder who it is he's talking about. I got no idea. I don't know. It's kind of feels like it's slapping me right in the face, but I don't know, man. I don't know. Teddy Blueger, of course, Stanley Cup champion with the Vegas Golden Knights back in 2023, traded over there from Pittsburgh, won a cup, and then came over to Vancouver in free agency, had a stellar year in 2024 alongside of Connor Garland and Dakota Joshua, and then the next two seasons were up and down. He had 26 points in 82 games the year after that, and then 17 points in 35 games this most recent season. For what it's worth, this point production is actually really great. He would have been on pace for, almost 40 points on the year had he played the full season, but unfortunately he did not play the full season. He was out for most of it. But seeing Teddy Blueger go out there and cite the team culture and team cohesion as things that he needed to learn about and think about, it obviously sets the tone, and it points us in a very specific direction when talking about Teddy Blueger and his season with Vancouver last year. Here is Dan Riccio's tweet. Of course, Riccio used to be on Canucks Sportsnet 650-based radio. Now he is on the Off the Roster podcast in Toronto. Teddy Blueger called this final season in Vancouver a learning experience. When asked to explain, his answer revealed just how difficult things were with the Canucks. Here is the quote. I think just about, the importance of team cohesion, culture type stuff, what makes a team tick, what makes guys come together, play at their best. I think the goal for any team is to kind of get to a point where you find this balance of guys caring about each other enough to where they're willing to sacrifice themselves for the good of the team. And how you kind of get there, and trying to figure out how to get guys to be on the same page. I think stuff that I took for granted early in my career in Pittsburgh, with Sidney Crosby setting the tone, is practice habits, discipline of showing up on time, being respectful to each other, to the trainers, to the staff, things like that I think seem like when you take each thing on its own, it seems like a small thing, but when you add them all up, it creates an environment within the facility that I think that environment's huge. And it has to be positive, and one where everyone can be themselves and come to work every day excited and upbeat instead of down and kind of negative. So that makes all the difference, I think. So just little things like that, and trying to figure out ways to navigate that. So I think that's kind of the stuff that you probably carry with yourself your whole life, even past your hockey career. There's a lot of ums, pauses, and whatevers in this statement, but man oh man, does that not indicate just where things were with Vancouver. Blueger straight up says, I took for granted Sidney Crosby enforcing this culture where we had to show up on time. We had to be nice to each other. We had to be nice to the trainers. We had to be nice to the staff. Teddy Blueger saying that that is something he took for granted after his days finished at Pittsburgh. And don't get me wrong, he was also with Vegas. But Vegas, he was only there for however many months. He was in Vancouver for 3 years. And he's saying into the media that, yeah, I took for granted the fact that we had to be nice to the staff of the team. What does that say about Vancouver? What does that say about the leadership in Vancouver? Let's read some of the replies. Noreen Smith said, shameful behavior, and all who were called out should be called out for their behavior. This is exactly what Ryan Johnson mentioned when he came on board, talking about how to treat your teammates, trainers, staff, so clearly this became a known issue. I hope Ryan Johnson and Manny Malhotra read this and they cut out all the cancers on this team by training camp. This is why Jim Rutherford was the worst GM in Canucks history. How bad do you have to be worse than Benning? Let's go over to the Canucks subreddit, because there was a post made on the same thing. Blueger cites culture and team cohesion in a new interview. He ends up talking about guys caring about each other to where they would sacrifice for the team, practice habits, showing up on time, and treating the staff. Man, this team was really led by a bunch of a-holes, eh? It starts at the top. Look at the comportment of RJ and the Sedins compared to JR and Alvin. Put incompetent, toxic guys in charge and it filters down. This team hasn't had a competent leader since Gillis, and it shows in the diminishing culture over the last decade. Blueger is one of the few guys from this era that I'll actually miss. Interesting, he also talked about the importance of creating an environment where everyone could come to work comfortable being themselves. Feels like we have heard that exact phrase a lot lately. It's interesting that he brings up how people treat staff. I wonder if it has anything to do with the alleged JT iPad chucking. Wow, he is very articulate. The cohesion and culture piece was stated really well. He was great for Vancouver, and I wish we could have brought a better culture for him to come into. Making Quinn Hughes the captain was such a dumb decision, nobody took it seriously, and that's why Miller did whatever the heck he wanted. Worst locker room ever! And I think that bottom part also is quite important too. Creating an environment not just where people are kind to each other, but where everybody can feel like they can be themselves, and they don't need to second guess who they are or what they want to talk about or the way they talk about stuff. I get that it's quite the liberal point of view to say, oh, well, people should feel comfortable in their own skin. But like, when you see what happens when that's not the case, that's where the problems come from. So Teddy Blueger, props to you for speaking the truth on Vancouver, even though he didn't necessarily say Vancouver in any part of the sentence. You know that's what he's talking about. He ain't talking about Vegas. He spent like 3 months there. He spent 3 years with the Canucks, and he's saying that he took some stuff for granted when he was away from Sidney Crosby and the culture they built in Pittsburgh. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. 99 and bye.